It was a quiet night in the sprawling mansion of one of the richest men in the city, the kind of mansion that looked more like a palace than a home, with tall windows reflecting the faint glow of the moon and gardens that stretched for acres. The tycoon had spent his day in meetings, negotiating deals, and making decisions that affected millions of dollars, and now, finally, he could rest. The mansion was silent except for the occasional hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the city, which seemed so small and far away from his luxurious life. He walked through the marble-floored hallway in his silk pajamas, enjoying the coolness of the night air as he prepared for bed. Everything was in its place, the paintings hanging perfectly straight, the antique clocks ticking in harmony, the expensive rugs soft beneath his feet. It was a life that many could only dream of, but for him, it was normal, and yet, normality had a strange way of making the unexpected feel even more shocking. He entered his bedroom, a huge space with a king-sized bed, curtains drawn to block out the city lights, and a view of the garden that looked almost magical in the moonlight. He turned off the lights, leaving only a faint glow from the hallway, and lay down, feeling the softness of the sheets and the comfort of a life built on wealth and careful planning. He closed his eyes, expecting nothing more than sleep, yet somewhere in the back of his mind, a small feeling of unease lingered, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, something was not quite right. He dismissed it, thinking it was just the fatigue of a long day playing tricks on him. Minutes passed, and the mansion remained still, but then came a sound, faint at first, like a soft tap against the window or the rustling of a curtain. He opened his eyes, listening carefully, convinced it was nothing. The sound came again, slightly louder this time, coming from somewhere deep in the mansion, a noise that did not belong to the usual creaks of the house or the wind outside. His heart began to beat a little faster, a small but persistent pulse of fear making him more alert. The tycoon, who was used to controlling everything in his life, realized that he had no idea what was happening, and for a moment, that lack of control made him uneasy. He sat up in bed, trying to understand the source of the noise. Every shadow in the room seemed sharper, every sound louder. The mansion that had always felt like a fortress suddenly seemed fragile, as if it could be easily disturbed by some unknown force. He thought of the security systems, the cameras, the alarms, and yet, a part of him knew that technology could not explain everything. Sometimes, the unexpected slips through even the most careful plans, and tonight, it felt like something had slipped in. Curiosity mixed with caution, and he decided to investigate. Slowly swinging his legs off the bed and stepping onto the cold marble floor, the sound came again, this time from the hallway outside his room, a soft scuffing, like someone walking very carefully. He froze, listening intently, straining to hear every little detail. Every night, he had a routine, every night he felt safe, and yet tonight, the routine was broken. Replaced by the thrill of uncertainty, he moved quietly toward the door. Opening it just a crack, peering into the dark hallway, the moonlight spilled in from the windows, illuminating the expensive furniture, the carefully placed sculptures, and the long corridor that seemed endless in the dim light. The mansion felt different at night, more alive somehow, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. He could feel it in the air, a tension that was both exciting and frightening. The tycoon, who was used to facing challenges in boardrooms and on trading floors, felt a new kind of challenge tonight, one that required patience, observation, and courage. The sound continued, subtle but persistent, and he realized that whatever was making it was still inside the mansion. Moving, watching, existing just beyond the reach of certainty. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and decided to follow the sound, moving slowly, deliberately, through the hallways he knew so well. Yet tonight, they felt unfamiliar. The silence was broken only by his own careful footsteps, echoing slightly against the marble walls, and the occasional rustle of the curtains in the breeze. Each step brought him closer to the unknown, and with each step, his heart beat faster, filled with a mix of fear, excitement, and anticipation. The night that began quietly now held a promise of discovery, a promise that something unexpected, something unbelievable, was about to reveal itself. As he approached the end of the hallway, he paused, listening again. The noise had stopped for a moment, leaving only the sound of his own breathing and the faint ticking of the clocks. The tycoon knew that whatever was about to happen would change the rest of his night, and perhaps even his life. He felt a shiver run down his spine, but he did not retreat, curiosity pushing him forward. He was about to witness something that no amount of money, power, or planning could have prepared him for. The Tycoon stood frozen in the dim hallway, his eyes straining to pierce the shadows. Every corner of the mansion seemed to hold its own secret, the way the moonlight hit the antique furniture making the space feel like it was alive. He could feel the cool marble under his feet, and with every careful step, the silence seemed heavier, almost as if the house itself was holding its breath. Then he heard it again. A soft scuffing sound coming from somewhere near the grand staircase. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate, as if someone, or something, was moving carefully, deliberately, making sure not to be heard. The Tycoon's heart raced, a tight knot forming in his chest. He had faced pressure in boardrooms, danger in business deals, even angry clients who had tried to cheat him, but this was different. This was unpredictable, unknown, and deeply personal. He paused, listening intently, trying to locate the exact source of the noise. The sound came again, closer this time, brushing against the polished wooden banister, sending tiny vibrations through the floor. His instincts screamed for caution, yet his curiosity pulled him forward. He realized that fear was part of the thrill, and the unknown had a way of making even the richest, most powerful men feel small and vulnerable. Carefully, he took another step, and then another, each footfall echoing softly against the high ceilings. The shadows seemed to move with him, stretching and bending in strange ways, turning familiar corners into strange, unfamiliar shapes. The Tycoon stopped at the foot of the grand staircase, a place he had crossed hundreds of times but never with the mansion so quiet, so tense. The scuffing sound had stopped, leaving only a faint whisper of movement, like someone holding their breath. Waiting was unbearable, and yet, he knew he couldn't rush. Every instinct told him to stay alert. He remembered the security cameras and alarms, and yet, for the first time, he felt a strange sense of helplessness. Technology could not always predict life surprises, and tonight was about to prove it. Suddenly, a faint light flickered at the end of the hallway, a soft glow from a room he rarely entered. The Tycoon's eyes widened, unsure whether it was a reflection, a trick of the shadows, or the first real sign of something, or someone, else in the house. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, his senses sharpening with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. Every sound, every movement, became exaggerated, almost alive, and he could feel his heart beating in sync with the quiet rhythm of the mansion. He took another cautious step toward the light, each movement deliberate, silent, as if the floor itself might betray him. He thought of the doors, the locks, the cameras, and yet, the soft scuffing had already proven that even the best preparations could be bypassed. The unknown presence seemed to toy with him, testing his patience and composure, and the Tycoon realized that he was not just chasing a sound but confronting a mystery, one that might hold more than just a momentary surprise. A sudden draft brushed past him, carrying the faint scent of something unfamiliar, metallic yet faintly sweet. The Tycoon froze, straining to place it, but the sensation only heightened his awareness, his mind racing through every possibility. Every business deal, every adventure, every calculated risk he had ever taken felt safe compared to the unpredictability of this moment. He could hear his own breathing, shallow and fast, mingling with the distant hum of the city that seemed impossibly far away. And yet, the mansion felt larger than ever, full of hidden corners, secrets, and whispers. Then came the movement again, subtle but unmistakable, a shadow flitting across the far doorway, quick, almost playful, like it was aware of his presence but deliberately hiding. The Tycoon's pulse quickened, and he felt a mix of fear and fascination. He wanted to run, to retreat to the safety of his bed, yet he could not tear his eyes away. The mansion had transformed into a living puzzle, and he was the player forced to move carefully, every step carrying the risk of discovery. He knew this night would not be ordinary, that the first sign of intrusion was only the beginning. The scuffing, the flickering light, the mysterious shadow, all of it hinted at something larger, something impossible to ignore. And as he took one more careful step toward the source, he realized that whatever awaited him would challenge not only his courage but his understanding of reality itself. The night was far from over, and the first sign had already promised that nothing would ever be the same again. The Tycoon paused at the top of the grand staircase, his eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. Every hallway seemed darker, every familiar object somehow stranger in the moonlight. He could hear his own heartbeat, steady yet loud in the quiet mansion, and it reminded him that he was alone, or at least, He thought he was. The scuffing sound had stopped, but the air felt heavier, charged with something unexplainable. He tightened his jaw, trying to dismiss the fear creeping through him, yet a small voice inside whispered that this was no ordinary night. He moved slowly along the hallway, his footsteps careful, deliberate, avoiding the soft rugs that could betray him with a creak. His eyes flicked to every picture on the walls, every shadow that moved slightly in the corners of the room. At first, he tried to reason with himself, telling himself it could be the wind, or the house settling, or maybe even a stray animal, yet deep down, he knew the mansion was too secure for any of those explanations. Every sound, every flicker of light, seemed intentional, as if the building itself was hiding a secret just for him. As he reached the library, he noticed the faint movement of the curtains, swaying slightly though no breeze should be there. His instincts sharpened, and he stopped mid-step, listening, watching, every sense alert. The Tycoon had always relied on logic, strategy, and careful planning in his life, yet none of that mattered now. The feeling of being watched, of being observed by an unknown presence, sent a shiver down his spine. He realized that the intruder, if it was an intruder, knew the house better than he did, moving silently, deliberately, almost teasing him with the suspense. A sudden thought struck him: what if it wasn't a person at all? Maybe it was something entirely unexpected, something that logic could not explain. He laughed softly, though it was tinged with nervousness. He had built his life on wealth and control, yet here, in this quiet night, he felt powerless. Vulnerability, something he rarely experienced, crept in like a shadow, reminding him that money could buy comfort but not certainty. The Tycoon's gaze fell on a small table near the window, where a family photo sat framed in gold. His hand twitched, wanting to reach out for reassurance, yet he stopped, frozen by the thought that the source of the noise could be just beyond the glass, watching him, waiting for him to make a move. He could feel every hair on his body standing on end, the muscles in his neck and shoulders tense, every nerve alert, as if the mansion itself had become a trap, a puzzle designed to test his courage. He took another cautious step forward, noticing now that the usual comfort of the chandeliers, the paintings, and the expensive furniture offered no solace. In fact, they seemed to mock him, reminding him of the predictability of his life, which was now being shattered by a single unexplained event. The Tycoon realized that this suspicion, this uncertainty, was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. It was a test, not of wealth or power, but of intuition, observation, and bravery. He glanced at the security monitors in the hallway, a habit he couldn't shake, and yet, many of them were dark, flickering, or inexplicably off. The systems that had always promised safety were now unreliable, almost irrelevant. His mind raced with possibilities, some rational, some absurd, but all plausible enough to keep him moving, searching, watching. The Tycoon understood that the mansion he thought he knew was now a labyrinth, and the intruder, or the presence, was the one holding the map. Then came the sound again, soft but deliberate, almost like a whisper on the floorboards, a careful step moving closer, yet nowhere in sight. The Tycoon froze, holding his breath, feeling the tension rise. Every instinct screamed to find a weapon, to secure himself, to hide, yet he remained, compelled by curiosity and a strange thrill of the unknown. The suspicion had grown into certainty. Something, or someone, was inside the mansion, and it was moving with purpose, intelligent and deliberate. Testing him, observing him, waiting for the perfect moment. He pressed himself against the wall, heart pounding, mind racing, realizing that the night had just begun, that the first sound had been a warning, and that the real mystery was only about to unfold. Every shadow, every flicker of movement, every whisper of air held a clue, and the Tycoon knew that patience, caution, and courage would be the only tools to uncover the truth. The mansion was no longer just a home. It was a stage for an unexpected story, one that he had no choice but to face. The Tycoon's breathing was slow but tense as he crept along the hallway, each step measured, silent. The faint light he had glimpsed earlier now flickered more steadily from the doorway at the far end, drawing him like a magnet. His heart thumped heavily, not from exhaustion but from anticipation, curiosity, and fear mixed into a single, undeniable feeling. He had imagined countless scenarios in his mind, some rational, some absurd, but none had prepared him for the moment of revelation. As he reached the threshold of the room, he hesitated, placing a hand lightly on the doorframe. Peeking inside, his eyes widened, and for a moment, he could not breathe properly. It was a sight that seemed impossible, yet there it was, real, undeniable, and completely beyond explanation. The room, usually so ordinary, was transformed by shadows and light, moving in strange patterns that made familiar objects feel alien. The soft scuffing that had haunted him was revealed to be caused not by a person, but by a movement so deliberate, so unexpected, that it left him frozen in disbelief. He stepped inside cautiously, his eyes scanning every corner. Every shadow seemed to shift as he moved, creating the illusion of figures and shapes that weren't there. He realized the noise had been caused by a small mechanical device, a robot of sorts, one he had never seen before, yet it moved with a precision that made it seem alive, almost as if it had a mind of its own, obeying commands invisible to the human eye. The Tycoon's initial shock slowly gave way to fascination, tinged with unease. Because he had never ordered anything like this, and yet, there it was, performing tasks silently in the night. He crouched down, inspecting the device, noticing tiny scratches on the polished floor that mapped its path. The robot was compact but sophisticated, with sensors that allowed it to navigate the mansion flawlessly. Its purpose, however, remained a mystery. He could see the wires, the small cameras, and the tools it carried, but none of it made sense. Who had placed it here, and why? The Tycoon's mind raced, replaying every visitor, every service staff member, every recent interaction he had, searching for a clue. Then he noticed a small note attached to the device, folded neatly, almost as if placed with care. He hesitated before opening it, a strange mix of dread and curiosity making his fingers tremble slightly. Unfolding the paper, he read the words slowly, unable to believe they were meant for him. "I am watching, learning, protecting," it said, cryptic yet strangely reassuring. The Tycoon's eyes darted around the room, wondering if someone was hiding in the shadows, orchestrating this mysterious night, but the room was empty aside from the robot and the faint flicker of the moonlight. A sense of both relief and confusion washed over him, the noise, the shadow, the mystery. It had all been a setup, but not malicious, rather deliberate, almost like a message. He leaned against the wall, processing the reality, realizing that even in a life filled with wealth and control, surprises could come from the most unexpected sources. The mansion, which he thought he knew inside out, had revealed a secret he could never have anticipated, and it was a mixture of wonder and unease that made him pause. He studied the robot carefully, noticing its movements were not random, but precise, almost intelligent, like it was programmed to explore, observe, and perhaps learn. The Tycoon realized that this discovery was not just about the object itself, but about the implications of what it represented. In a world where technology was advancing faster than he could keep up with, even his vast wealth could not prepare him for the unknown possibilities waiting silently in the corners of his own home. As he backed out of the room slowly, taking mental notes of every detail, he felt a mixture of admiration and caution. The discovery had answered some questions but raised even more. What was the purpose of this device? Who had placed it, and why had it activated now? In the middle of the night, which had started as a simple interruption, had turned into an unexpected encounter with a reality far more complex and astonishing than he could have imagined. The Tycoon knew one thing for certain: tonight was only the beginning. The discovery of the device had set a chain of events into motion, and whatever came next would challenge not just his courage, but his understanding of his own life, his mansion, and the world around him. He took a deep breath, ready to face whatever surprises awaited, knowing that the night held secrets he was only beginning to uncover. The Tycoon stepped back from the mysterious device, his mind racing, a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions colliding all at once. His heart pounded, not from physical exertion, but from the sheer intensity of the moment. He had faced boardroom betrayals, financial disasters, and countless challenges in his life, yet nothing had ever prepared him for this. The quiet of the mansion now felt alive, almost breathing around him, filled with the echoes of his own astonishment. He sank into a chair near the doorway, his hands gripping the armrests as he tried to steady himself. The robot remained in the center of the room, silent, motionless for now, yet its presence was overwhelming, almost hypnotic. The Tycoon's eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. His mind attempted to categorize it, to reduce it to something logical, but logic seemed useless here, unable to contain the magnitude of the discovery. A wave of disbelief washed over him, followed quickly by fascination. He could not believe that such a device could exist inside his own home without his knowledge, or perhaps with the knowledge of someone he trusted. The thought was chilling, and yet, he felt a strange thrill at witnessing something so advanced, so perfectly designed. It was a mixture of fear and admiration, a feeling that made his chest tighten and his mind whirl. The Tycoon's eyes lingered on the robot, studying every detail, every wire, every sensor, trying to decipher how it worked, how it moved, how it had gone undetected for so long. The craftsmanship was impeccable, beyond anything he had seen, almost as if it had a mind of its own, responding to the mansion, to him, to the night itself. He realized that this was not just a machine, but a piece of technology that blurred the line between artificial and intelligent, a silent observer of the world he thought he controlled. His reaction shifted subtly as he considered the implications. The Tycoon had spent years building his fortune, securing his mansion with state-of-the-art technology, yet here was a device that had bypassed all of it. Silently, flawlessly, he felt a rush of vulnerability, something he rarely experienced. Even in the most dangerous business negotiations, money could buy comfort, power, and control, but it could not buy awareness of everything hidden in the shadows. He leaned forward, his curiosity winning over caution, touching the device carefully, testing its weight, its mechanics. His fingers hovered over the small note that had been attached, the cryptic words still echoing in his mind. "I am watching, learning, protecting." The Tycoon's eyes narrowed, trying to decipher whether it was a threat or a gift, a warning or a message. The room seemed to grow colder, quieter, the weight of the unknown pressing on him from all sides. Suddenly, he realized that his initial fear was only the surface of what he felt. Beneath it was a deep, undeniable sense of awe. The Tycoon had never imagined that his life could intersect with something so advanced, so mysterious, and yet so purposeful. The reaction he felt was physical and emotional, a mix of adrenaline, wonder, and a little terror. His mind raced with questions. Who had created this? Why was it here, and what did it want from him? He rose slowly from the chair, circling the device, every instinct alert. The mansion felt transformed, no longer just a place of wealth and comfort, but a stage for something unknown. The shadows seemed to stretch toward him, and every creak of the floorboard sounded like a whisper. The Tycoon realized that he was witnessing the beginning of something far bigger than a simple disturbance in the night, a moment that would leave a lasting mark on his life. For a long time, he stood there, frozen in a mixture of disbelief and fascination, unable to take his eyes off the robot, feeling the weight of the night settle around him. The discovery had triggered something unexpected in him, a deep awareness that even the most controlled lives could be disrupted by a single, extraordinary event. His reaction, raw and unfiltered, was a mix of fear, awe, and an unexplainable excitement. The night, which had begun as ordinary, had transformed into a lesson in humility, curiosity, and the unpredictable nature of the world. Finally, he exhaled slowly, letting some of the tension leave his body. He knew that the reaction he felt now would guide the next steps, that understanding this discovery would require patience, observation, and courage. The mansion remained silent around him, yet he knew it was alive with secrets, and his reaction was only the first step in unraveling them. The night was far from over, and the Tycoon's emotions, raw and intense, would fuel the journey ahead. The Tycoon stood in the middle of the room, staring at the device that had so completely upended his night. Every flicker of the moonlight revealed details he hadn't noticed before, and with each passing second, the mystery deepened. The room no longer felt like a familiar part of his mansion, but a stage for something far larger, something carefully orchestrated. He took a step closer to the robot, and then froze as he noticed movement, subtle but undeniable, like the shadows themselves were shifting. His eyes widened as he saw the tiny cameras on the device adjusting, as if it had been aware of his presence the entire time. The note, with its cryptic message, now seemed less like a puzzle and more like an invitation, a signal that the night's events were meant for him to witness. The Tycoon's mind raced, trying to piece together who could have created such a device, how it had entered his home undetected, and why it had activated tonight, every question more perplexing than the last. Then, as if on cue, the robot moved again, its mechanisms whirring softly, almost like a whisper in the still night. It rolled slowly toward a small cabinet at the corner of the room, stopped, and extended a tiny mechanical arm, revealing a hidden compartment he had never noticed before. The Tycoon's breath caught in his throat. He stepped closer, heart hammering, unable to look away from the unfolding scene. Inside the compartment lay a small envelope, carefully sealed, and next to it, a device unlike anything he had ever seen, sleek, compact, and humming with energy. The robot's purpose now became clearer, though still mysterious. It had not come to threaten him, but to guide him, to show him something hidden in plain sight for reasons he could only guess. The Tycoon reached for the envelope, his fingers trembling slightly. The handwriting on it was elegant and familiar, a signature he recognized, but had not seen in years. He opened the envelope slowly, revealing a letter that explained everything, or almost everything. The words described a plan orchestrated long ago, a secret safeguard designed to test his awareness, his courage, and his ability to handle the unexpected. The robot had been placed in the mansion as a guardian of knowledge, programmed to reveal itself only when he was ready to confront it. The Tycoon's mind reeled at the implications. He had thought the night was full of danger, but it was a test. A carefully designed revelation meant to teach him something he could not learn in boardrooms or through money alone. As he read on, the letter described the origins of the robot, the meticulous planning that went into its creation, and the purpose of the test, to remind him that wealth and power could never fully shield him from the unpredictable, that life's lessons often arrived in the most unexpected forms. The Tycoon felt a wave of understanding wash over him, mingled with awe. He realized that the noises, the shadows, the flickering lights, had all been part of a deliberate orchestration, each designed to provoke curiosity, caution, and reflection. The mansion, which had seemed ordinary just hours ago, now felt like a living entity, aware and interactive. The robot, silent once more, seemed almost to bow in acknowledgement, as if it had fulfilled its purpose for the night. The Tycoon, standing in the moonlit room, finally allowed himself to feel the magnitude of the experience. He understood that the night had revealed more than a secret device. It had revealed a truth about himself, about his instincts, and about the fragile balance between control and uncertainty. For the first time in years, the Tycoon felt a sense of humility, not shame, but a recognition that even the most careful, most powerful life could be touched by the unexpected. He looked around the room, taking in every shadow, every detail, seeing the mansion anew, as a place of mystery, learning, and revelation. The truth had unfolded before him in ways he could not have imagined, and he knew that his life, his perspective, and even his understanding of safety would never be the same again. He exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief, amazement, and contemplation, ready to process what he had learned, ready to step into the rest of the night knowing that some truths were far stranger and more valuable than he could ever have anticipated. The night, which had begun with a simple noise, had revealed a story of patience, courage, and awakening, a story that would stay with him forever. The Tycoon remained in the moonlit room long after the robot had gone silent. His mind raced with thoughts, memories, and questions that refused to settle. He had discovered something extraordinary, something that had shaken his assumptions and reminded him that even the most controlled life could be full of surprises. The quiet of the mansion now felt heavy, almost sacred, as if the walls themselves were aware of what had just occurred. He sank into a chair near the window, gazing out at the gardens bathed in silver light. The familiar landscapes now seemed mysterious, the shadows dancing in the moonlight like silent witnesses to the night's events. The Tycoon's thoughts wandered to the implications of the discovery, to the careful orchestration behind it, and to the lesson hidden in every sound, every flicker, every shadow that had haunted him hours earlier. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel vulnerable, not in a moment of danger, but in a moment of understanding. He realized that his wealth, his status, his power, they could never protect him from the unexpected, and yet, that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a reminder that life was full of mysteries waiting to be discovered. He leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly, letting the tension drain from his body, yet knowing that his mind would not rest tonight, nor any night soon. The Tycoon's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on his past, his decisions, and the life he had built. He had always relied on planning, precision, and control, but tonight had shown him that some things could not be planned, that some truths revealed themselves only to those willing to notice, to those willing to confront the unknown. The night had stripped away his certainty and replaced it with something far more powerful: awareness, humility, and curiosity. He walked slowly through the room, touching familiar objects with a new sense of appreciation. Each piece of furniture, each painting, each artifact now carried a different meaning, not because they had changed, but because he had changed. The night had left an imprint on his mind, a reminder that life was a mixture of control and chaos, and that the unexpected often brought the most valuable lessons. His attention returned to the envelope and the letter, now lying on the table. He picked it up again, reading the words with renewed focus. Each sentence seemed to resonate differently now, carrying more weight, more meaning. The message was clear: even in a life dominated by wealth, security, and certainty, there was room for wonder, discovery, and growth. The Tycoon smiled faintly, a smile tinged with awe and respect, realizing that the night had been a gift, not a threat, a test not of fear, but of perception and courage. He thought of the robot, now silent and still, and wondered about the intelligence behind it. The precision, the timing, the subtlety of its actions spoke of careful planning, of a mind that had considered every detail, yet left just enough mystery to provoke curiosity and reflection. The Tycoon marveled at the ingenuity, feeling a mix of admiration and humility, understanding that even the greatest minds in the world could craft experiences that challenged him in ways he had never imagined. Hours passed, and the mansion gradually returned to its quiet state, yet the Tycoon could feel the lingering effect of the night, the adrenaline, the awe, the reflection. It all settled in him like a tide, reshaping the contours of his thoughts and perceptions. He realized that this night, which began with a simple noise, would forever remain etched in his memory as a turning point, a moment when reality had shifted in subtle yet profound ways. Finally, he moved toward his bedroom, carrying the letter carefully. His footsteps echoed softly in the hall, a rhythm that reminded him of both the mansion's permanence and the fleeting nature of time. As he prepared to rest, he understood that the night's events were not just an isolated incident, but a beginning. The Tycoon's life would continue, yet the lessons of curiosity, humility, and awareness would guide him in ways money and power never could. He lay down, staring at the ceiling as the first hints of dawn crept through the curtains. A sense of calm mixed with anticipation filled him. The aftermath of the night was not fear, but reflection, not confusion, but understanding. He had faced the unexpected, discovered the unknown, and emerged with a deeper sense of himself and the world around him. The mansion, the shadows, the robot, the letter, all had combined to create an experience that would forever change him. And as the Tycoon finally drifted into sleep, he knew one thing for certain: life would never feel entirely predictable again, and that was the most valuable discovery of all. The first light of dawn began to filter through the tall windows of the mansion, casting long, golden streaks across the marble floors. The Tycoon lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying every detail of the night. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of movement now held a deeper meaning. The events of the night were no longer just a mystery, but a lesson. A revelation that reached far beyond the confines of his luxurious home. He thought about the robot, its silent movements, the precision with which it had executed its purpose, and the note that had carried the cryptic yet meaningful message: "I am watching, learning, protecting." The words no longer seemed mysterious, but wise, carrying a message about vigilance, awareness, and humility. The Tycoon realized that the night had forced him to confront not just the unknown in his mansion, but the unknown within himself, and in the process, he had learned more than he ever expected. He rose from his bed and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens, the lawns, and the sculptures bathed in the soft morning light. Everything appeared the same, yet nothing felt the same. The mansion, which had seemed ordinary in its perfection, now held layers of meaning, reminders that life was full of surprises, and that control, wealth, and power could never replace awareness and understanding. The Tycoon's reflection in the glass seemed different too, his own eyes filled with a mixture of awe, gratitude, and humility. He sat at his desk, opening the letter again, reading the carefully chosen words one more time. The message was clear: life would continue to bring moments that could not be predicted, and the true value of a person was measured not by wealth or status, but by courage, curiosity, and the ability to adapt. The Tycoon smiled faintly, understanding that the night's events had been a gift, a lesson disguised as mystery, a challenge that revealed truths about him he had never considered. The lessons were simple yet profound. The first was humility, the understanding that no matter how powerful or wealthy one might be, there are always forces beyond control, forces that demand respect and attention. The second was curiosity, the importance of observing carefully, listening closely, and being willing to explore the unknown rather than fear it. And the third was courage, the recognition that fear is natural, but facing it with calm and careful thought can lead to growth and Understanding. He reflected on the subtle details that had guided him throughout the night, from the scuffing sounds to the flickering light to the careful movements of the device, and realized that each was a test, a prompt to slow down, notice, and think. The night had been a lesson in mindfulness, a reminder that life is not just about speed, efficiency, or accumulation, but about awareness and understanding. The Tycoon felt a deep sense of respect for the experience, knowing that it had shaped him in ways no wealth or power could achieve. For the rest of the morning, he moved through his mansion with a new perspective, noticing small details he had ignored before, appreciating the craftsmanship of the furniture, the arrangement of the rooms, the subtle play of light and shadow. The mansion was no longer just a symbol of status, but a living environment filled with lessons and opportunities for reflection. Every corner seemed to whisper reminders of the night, and he felt grateful for the experience, not fearful, not anxious, but enlightened. Finally, he sat back at his desk, taking a deep breath. The lessons were clear, yet their value was profound. Life would continue to bring unexpected events, but he now understood that each could be an opportunity for growth if approached with curiosity, humility, and courage. The Tycoon smiled, feeling a quiet strength settle within him, a calm awareness that no matter what surprises the world held, he could face them, learn from them, and emerge wiser. And as the morning light fully filled the mansion, he felt a sense of closure, yet also anticipation. The night had ended, but the lessons would guide him forever, shaping not just his actions, but his understanding of life, people, and himself. He had awakened in the darkness to a mystery, and he had emerged into the light with knowledge, insight, and a new appreciation for the unpredictability and beauty of life. The Tycoon knew that no wealth could ever compare to the value of what he had learned, and he carried that knowledge forward, quietly, deliberately, and forever changed.